U.S. government's ongoing fight against prescription drug abuse in America leads off our show today. Thank you for taking 10 minutes to watch. I'm Carl Azuz from the CNN Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Prescription drug and heroin abuse is exploding. Last week, we reported on the Food and Drug Administration's black box warning, its strongest possible warning that'll appear on commonly prescribed opioid painkillers. Now, the government's making it easier for doctors to prescribe anti-addiction drugs to help patients get over their dependence on opioids. The White House is also promising more than $100 million in funding to help treat addicts nationwide. Critics say these steps are long overdue, that the problem has already gotten out of hand. President Obama participated in a panel on the subject yesterday. It was moderated by CNN's Dr. Sanjay Gupta.
A number that really stuck with me when I first started reporting on this was 28,000. It was a number of people who died in 2014 of accidental opioid overdoses. About half of those were involved with prescription overdoses. It's a pretty staggering number. And there are so many different problems in the world that's where solutions really aren't that obvious. And this is a complicated problem. No question about it. There are people with chronic pain who are caught in the middle. There are people with addiction who are caught in the middle. But I also think it's a very fixable problem.
You know, my job is to promote the safety, the health, the prosperity of the American people. And that encompasses a whole range of things. It means that we're tracking down ISIL leaders, and it means that we're responding to natural disasters, and it means that we're trying to promote a strong economy. And when you look at the staggering statistics in terms of lives lost, productivity impacted, costs to communities, but most importantly, cost to families from this epidemic of opioids abuse, it has to be something that is right up there at the top of our radar screen. You mentioned the number 28,000. It's important to recognize that today we are seeing more people killed because of opioid overdose than traffic accidents. Now you think about that. A lot of people tragically die of car accidents, and we spend a lot of time and a lot of resources to reduce those fatalities. And the good news is that we've actually been very successful. Traffic fatalities are much lower today than they were when I was a kid, because we systematically looked at the data and we looked at the science, and we developed strategies and public education that allowed us to be safer drivers. The problem is here, we've got the trajectory going in the opposite direction.
The President Pro Tem of California's Senate says roughly a third of the state's workforce is paid minimum wage. An agreement between lawmakers, the governor, and union leaders is set to raise that wage to $15 an hour statewide. California currently has one of the highest minimum wages in the country. It's $10 an hour. This agreement would require businesses to raise that incrementally to $15 by the year 2022. If there's a recession or state budget problem, the raises could be put on hold. Low-wage workers in California have been pushing for years to get the state minimum wage raised. The benefit to employees is clear, and lawmakers in New York are considering doing the same thing. Critics say it's a bad idea because businesses might have to lay off workers or possibly shut down if they can't afford to pay the rate hike. Here's how wage hikes are playing out in a California city where the minimum is headed higher than $16 an hour.
We are headed to the city with the highest minimum wage in the country, Emeryville, California. What was your reaction when you heard about the proposed increase to $16?
Honestly, I was scared.
This is Chris Hilliard. He's a husband, father of 2 young girls, and he owns Farley's Coffee Shop.
Farley's was originally started by my father in San Francisco 26 years ago.
Most people that are working here are working for big businesses, and they're making $14.44 if they're making minimum wage. At small businesses, they're making $12.25. And by 2019, the minimum wage is expected to jump to $16, and that's for everyone.
It has an impact on local economies all the way up to the national level. And we've seen here locally when workers make a few extra dollars, that money gets recirculated in the local economies.
Is $16 a livable wage?
In the Bay Area, it's pretty hard to live on $15 or $16 an hour.
Going from $12.25 to $13 to $14 to $15 to $16, that's going to be a challenge as a small business owner. Any small independent business that was considering opening in Emeryville is going to probably have to consider whether they want to go forward with it.
Is there a fear that you might not be able to make this work?
We'll raise prices some, but of course we can only raise prices a certain percentage before we start to lose customers.
On the northern part of the Ring of Fire, it's a horseshoe-shaped line around the Pacific where earthquake and volcano activity is common. The Pavlov volcano is erupting for the first time since 2014. It's located in southwest Alaska along the Aleutian Arc. It's one of the region's most active volcanoes, but this eruption wasn't expected. It started over the weekend and sent an ash plume 37,000 feet high. That's the cruising altitude of passenger jets. And that's why dozens of flights in the region had to be canceled. The ash is more than a cloud, and it's more than a visibility threat for passing planes.
This is a place where we monitor volcanoes along the about 1,500-mile Aleutian Arc.
We have a lot of volcanoes in the Arc, and they're all explosive volcanoes, so they produce ash plumes, and they can be carried around the Earth. The biggest hazard is to aviation, but also impacts to people on the ground. When we think of ash, we think of powder or fireplace ash, but in fact, that's not at all what volcanic ash is like. It's just pulverized rock material. This is really scratchy stuff.
I primarily work deploying, repairing, and maintaining monitoring instrumentation. We try to get them these permanent monitoring sites as close into the volcanic sources as possible. These instruments are going to tell us exactly what the ground is doing.
That network of sensors, all that data is transmitted back in real time. A key indicator of a volcano that has been quiet for a long time and is becoming restless are volcanic earthquakes. If an ash cloud is produced, we can distinguish which volcano is erupting using low-frequency microphones. Satellites observe activity over that entire arc. Those observations feed into the predictions on where the cloud will go to try to keep aircraft out of the volcanic cloud. Anchorage is a large air cargo hub. We have about 25,000 passengers per day that transit over the volcanoes in Alaska.
When you ingest this rock material and glass and minerals into the engine, it can start to melt and turn back into a molten material liquid, and that shuts down the engines.
There have been 3 incidents of large aircraft losing power from all 4 engines worldwide since the mid-1980s, including one here in Alaska in 1989. We're always kept popping, looking at volcanoes that are restless and those that are actually in sort of low-level eruption. Large eruptions typically have large precursors, and so we're able to provide some advanced warning, although the ability to forecast the exact time and the exact size of an eruption is not possible.
It's known as the Old Line State, the Free State, and Little America. We're talking about Maryland, and that's the home of the Dragons of Annapolis Middle School. It's in Annapolis. Next up on today's roll call, we've got some Falcons from Omaha, Nebraska. Holy Cross Catholic School is watching today. And across the Pacific, in the Chinese capital, hello to the experimental school of Beihang University. Great to see our viewers in Beijing. Whether you're a fan of marshmallow peeps or you just like playing with your food, you'll find something sweet about this event in Maryland. It features some pretty famous peeps, such as Elvis Peepsley, Snoop Peep. I hear even Peeper Cottontail makes an appearance. It's an annual show that's been going on for 9 years, and it apparently takes a lot of work to cut them up, paste them down, and sculpt something that's truly speeptacular. Of course, nothing sweeter than hanging with your peeps at an event that's peeped in tradition where talent runs peep, and the company you peep won't make a peep if you get into peep and find your progress impeeped by an idea that's comprehensively uninspeepered. I'm Carl Azus, and we hope you'll check us out again tomorrow.